久しぶりだな、光ネット。
At one of Japan's airports, Hidoken returns from July, for some reason not initially explained. As elsewhere in the net, digital vines clog up all sorts of operation relating to transit in the net, something Hidoken was hoping wouldn't hit yet. He's apparently encountered the force behind it, and unfortunately, Neto's too busy trying to avoid his homework. Incidentally, this is a return to the series for Naoko Marikawa, one of the group of writers who insist on running Neto as if he were a complete, irresponsible, incompetent, brain-dead idiot. So of course, this is how they'd go about showing how he should be on top of a crisis like this, but for some reason is slacking on things without purpose or reason when the last several episodes have shown him to be better than that. It's like they avoided doing this that overtly in the previous episodes they wrote, mostly writing off Neto's dumb moments as being things that, when you're put in an unfamiliar situation, you stumble over yourself accidentally as you don't have an experienced plan of attack on a matter. But here, it's a lot more indefensible, and gives you a sense of how this all goes over. And yeah, it's actually Haruka that alerts him to something being off, instead of it being Meijin, who, as we've already established, is supposed to contact Neto whenever something like this happens in the event it's Dark Lloyd related, so Neto can investigate. As I've said, this series requires Neto to not be an idiot, to not be irresponsible, and it's only a small sect of writers that keep insisting he is against everything else we see of the guy and what the better writers on the show do. And in this case, the failure to inform him of a crisis, and the failure of him to do anything on his own when he hears by happenstance that strange things are going on, is what directly exasperates what happens in this episode, for no reason other than the writer of the episode is bashing on the character and making him these ways that are in contradiction to how he normally is supposed to act. And it's not just him, it's basically everybody in this episode that is acting like an idiot. As the individual doing the sabotage in the episode, which is removing critical data from all over the network that freezes up all sorts of programs, is Plant Man. And Plant Man's tampering is distinctly visual, with plant vines appearing on all screens directly connected to anything that is affected. And no one thought to go online and see if, hey, a Navier virus could be causing this? As normally, outside of some piece of machinery failing or alternatively going rampant, normally there is not this type of visual cue to show tampering to immediately tip off any investigator to what is wrong. With such an overt sign of sabotage, it's actually surprising Meijin and the others in the net police were not on the trail of the saboteur sooner. Now once more to elaborate on my recurring complaint, it is not just that Neto's written as an irresponsible idiot by certain members of the staff that is my problem. It is how they bend over backwards to create that interpretation in conflict with everything we've seen before. And by proxy, dumb down the entire world when they do it to emphasize that Neto in specific is the problem. But by doing so, showcase it often isn't him, and is only made out to be so by how the focus is targeted on him for the ridicule as he's made to act out of character, and yet everyone somehow expects him to solve the crisis of the week despite that. That is not a good thing any way around. Eventually Neto and Rockman track down the root of the problem. Finding Plant Man has set himself up in the transportation server, and unfortunately a host of security navies prevent them simply burning the cyber foliage away, leaving them to have to take the slow way of chopping at it. Unfortunately, the lost data hasn't been returned. Another one of these data plants having set up at the library where Mail has similarly lost Roll, with the plant there growing to bloom with Roll as a host. However, we see another sign of why Naoko Marikawa has not gotten with the program with the evolved status quo. The advanced model PET thanks to it using wireless technology, is not ever supposed to lose contact and connectivity with the Navi that normally hosts it. So the operator should be able to send chip data and recall the Navi from literally anywhere. But as Neto physically takes time to get to the Akihara library where Mail is, the story treats Rockman as being unable to contact Neto at all, as was the status quo when they had the previous model of PET that required the operator physically jack their terminals into a wired outlet to connect to a Navi. Thus Rockman gets ambushed by viruses while trying to deal with the plant solo. It's like, did Marikawa miss a meeting? Were they not there when the staff writers went over this stuff? Were they not aware of how things were set up and changed for the season from the previous scripts? Because there is no story reason for why this is happening this way, other than Marikawa insisting that Neto is an imbecile. This attack of idiocy, however, leaves Rockman weak as Plantman finally comes in, voiced by Hiroyuki Yoshino? Okay, what is the guy who is partly responsible for screwing up Gundam Seed Destiny, made the character Kallen Kozuki be treated like shit in Code Geass alongside the scripts with the compilation movies, and completely and utterly botched a certain Magical Index Season 3 story adaptation, doing here voicing a Dark Light antagonist before any of that happened? Actually, no. There is also a voice actor that is also named Hiroyuki Yoshino. The Hiroyuki Yoshino who is a voice actor is also, ironically, most known for playing the character of Alleluia Haptism in Gundam 00. But unlike with that character, Plantman does not have a superpowered psycho side that would allow him to avoid the attacks of Heatman, as this is what Hinokens come back to town to track down. Unfortunately, Plantman's smarter than a number of other Darkloids, and loaded himself with water element data to fight against those who are his type weakness, freezing Heatman solid with Dark Chip augmented ice that damages the Super Burner Navi enough that the plant attacks that normally wouldn't work actually do. However, something odd happens as Heatman gets more and more amped up in the battle. Mannerisms of the prior Fireman linking into the normally more stoic Heatman. At least, I think? The problem with Heatman and Hinoken with the back half of Season 1 is the guy was barely around since. While he held a grudge against Gospel for their role in Fireman's loss, he wasn't around much to really engage in that. And when the former World 3 agents were involved, it was more common that others outside of their number would take focus, such as with Midoi and Alex's stories with Gauss. And that's in turn because Freezeman showed up as the focused antagonist all of twice. Thus, Heatman in the time he's been around hasn't had an opportunity to actually have character. So how are we supposed to know that this isn't how Heatman is supposed to be acting? This is another reason why the episode struggles. It hinges this on something we're not even aware is happening in regards to the shifts between Heat and Fireman, as Heatman wasn't allowed to be a character with a distinct persona themselves. And again, Marikawa had to have known that. They wrote previous episodes part of Hinoken and Fireman's character arc to be aware of that detail. But regardless, this emergence of Heatman's past self happens as the Navi is left critically injured. It only being through use of tainted virus chips that Hinoken is able to plant a tracker on the Darkloid for later. But yeah, Heatman's prognosis isn't good. The episode now choosing to flash back to what got the pair to head over here in the first place. It appears that while the World 3 agents were still operating their curry shop in Jawai, they collectively came under attack by the Darkloids and Plantman in specific. Why? You want to give us a reason to why? Like, I get them attacking around Densan City to help distract the Net Police from getting a handle on their longer schemes by keeping them occupied, while also disrupting the simple lives of humans for their eventual take over everything goals. But the World 3 team are literally in another country, one which isn't exactly a big player in global security or tech development that would act as a counter to them, or possess resources they could use that would legitimize going to strike there as happens in later episodes. All you have there is an annoying digital idol, the remnants of Yuichiro's original dimensional area experiments, and the World 3 crew that have retired from being villains. Military target, a resort island community, is not. Regardless, Hinoken's been chasing Plantman, as the other Navis are still trapped there, as Heatman wasn't strong enough to burn the entire entrapment plant down, as it had grown too strong off the other's data, thinking the best way to stop it was to delete the root of the problem. And worse, Roll is now stuck in the same situation of slowly being drained of life by them as well. And here's where the story once again shoots itself in the foot. As, remember the first plant Rockman cut down with his sword chip earlier? Yeah, they rescued 2 Navis pretty damn easily from it. And they're stuck there stationarily rooted to the cyberground. Is there any reason why they, couldn't have cut them down in the interim? As I know Hinoken has sword chips. They are fire sword chips, but a sword is a sword. Fortunately though, Meijin's here to help as well. Since Meijin is Heatman's creator, and Heatman is in pretty poor condition at this point, wasn't he deleted last season too, taking down Freezeman? How'd he come back from that? Anyways, Meijin can do everything they need to repair the Navi back up to full strength, and augment him further to be able to counter Darkloids too. However, due to the time limit they're under before the other victims of Plantman succumb to the damage over time, Meijin has to do something rather drastic, using an emergency recovery program he spent years developing to restore Hinoken's Navi back to factory settings as Fireman. As Meijin explains, the original Fireman had too little data left to exist on his own, but when Meijin merged Fireman's data with Heatman, everything that Fireman had left was compressed into Heatman as saved within him. As Heatman was just an operated shell before that point, the recovery program will in turn invert that relationship, restoring Fireman by replacing his lost data from that which is then cannibalized from Heatman's damaged data. 2 broken Navis acting symbiotically to be restored as one.
お前はHinoken-sama.
Eventually, Neto uses Hinoken's bug to track Plantman to, where else, a botanical garden for their confrontation. Unfortunately, they're expected, and man does Plantman seem to like the sound of his own voice. Which is all the worse for him, as with how he's depicted here, well, all I hear in my head when he opens his mouth is the voice of Levi Stubbs from his role in the film Little Shop of Horrors.
Does it have to be human? Does it have to be mine?
Unfortunately, even dual-wielding doesn't give Rockman much of an advantage due to Plantman being powered up by a dark chip. Fire attacks likewise no longer effective due to dark chips giving Darkloids another ability we've seen in the series, but from other Navis. That being the Dark Aura, the inverse counterpart to Life Aura, which was last seen in Battle Network 3, when it was used by an official Navi trying and failing to get one up on base.exe. See, I told you it counted as a dark chip! Even though Base's Life Aura abilities would later be assimilated to be part of the Dark Aura branded chips. Whoops. So it's just up to the protagonist pair to fend off Plantman's augmented assaults until Meijin can finish his work.
Rockman! 後で必ず駆けつけると言っただろ。
Yeah, we can see that. Do you ever shut up? Plantman slots the dark chip, seeming to gain back the initiative. However, due to the pair Navi's long history as rivals, it's just the type of bond that makes for a synchronization of soul. And with twice the firepower at play, Plantman's vines wilt in the presence of the eternal flame of hope. Plantman appears to be deleted, and his data plants all vanish, restoring the affected Navis in the net, with Neto printing the new soul form chip, and Hinoken welcoming his true partner home. The wrap-up. We have Burning Soul, a clear Yu-Gi-Oh! Reference and an appropriate one to Hinoken having to master his inner self a bit, and to the revival of Fireman himself. We have I've Got Soul, to Rockman gaining access to Fire Soul, this being the second of the Red Sun exclusive forms Axess in the series. Unsurprisingly, the next form they get is also a Red Sun form, because overall, Red Sun forms were just better. We have Please Stop Talking to Plant Man, who just cannot shut up, and has to say everything he's experiencing and planning as it happens. We have Flanderized Moron, to the recurring and annoying habit of half the Rockman.exe anime staff for depicting Neto as an irresponsible idiot for no justifiable in-story reason. As I have said time and again over the years, being bad at schoolwork isn't necessarily a sign someone is stupid, and there's no reason for them to go out of their way to repeatedly enforce that trope when the truly imbecilic are those who don't think and ignore reality in ways that end up being malicious to those around them. And as a consequence, this episode is frustrating, in that the Hidoken elements of it are a strong backbone to ground it, but that's not what it does. It fills time with the insufferable Neto is a moron subplot that, to beat a dead horse because damn it this is my show, isn't truly reflective of the nuance of the character. This wouldn't be so bad in moderation or in the way other staff writers do it, where it is more a sign of the age he's in as opposed to detrimental to his own development. Had Neto been more on point and focused on his job, or the flashback part of this with Hidoken finding his fellow team's navvies in this state and coming to Neto for help so they could investigate and defeat the Dark Lord together, well, those would have been far stronger beats that would have carried the entire thing without the need for unnecessary fluff that harms the involved. I also dislike Roll being used as a victim for this again, since it really could have been any of the rotating cast of navvies that got captured, whereas they'd mostly stepped away from a Roll is useless interpretation thus far this season. But unfortunately for all involved, this does end up being an arc episode, due to it being an episode that includes a soul form acquisition and debut. But it's not a net positive one due to the season 1 flotsam that just didn't seem to get cleared out.